have to be determined by Fritz if it was appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Sonnenberg.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this. We have rental units all over the place. If you're moving or constructing or whatever you're doing and you need temporary storage, you just go rent a unit. There's all kinds of them in Waterford. I've seen them all over the county. Probably cheaper than dragging in a sea camp. Thank you.
Councillor Columbus.
Well, if somebody breaches this bylaw, what is the fine? Like, you just leave it there and bylaw officer comes by and you just leave it there for another month?
Mr. Mayor, this would be considered a land use bylaw, so it's just subject to compliance, and any fines would be the determination of the courts. So we'd be seeking to comply with the bylaw, and if they don't, we proceed with the court process.
Anything further? I'm just dying to call the question. See how this goes. The amendment on the floor is to change it from 1 month to 6 months. Those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? The amendment is defeated. It's been moved by Black, seconded by Oliver, that bylaw 15Z27 be approved. Signed by the mayor or the clerk and affixed with the corporate seal. That is the container bylaw as printed. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. An interesting round of bylaws this evening. Thank you very much. Okay, excuse me, a notice of motions, and we have some here. It's been moved by Councillor Oliver and seconded by Councillor Height that the rules of order be waived to allow for the introduction of a motion of reconsideration. That motion is on the floor for discussion. Councillor Black?
I'd like to ask a question through you to the clerk. Under what circumstances should we be allowing the waiving of the rules of procedure? Is there a criteria, or can we just do it with absolutely anything? I thought there had to be, maybe some kind of urgency to it, or because this is in lieu of a notice of motion, right? So it's doing it now versus in 2 weeks. So what is the criteria?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's a good question. The waiving of the rules of order is a 2/3 majority requirement, and it's kind of the catch-all within the procedural bylaw. So we always say it's one to not use regularly, because you could waive anything in the procedural bylaw through that provision. In this case, I believe we're using it just simply because the notice of motion process would result in this taking a while to address. So.
Yeah, I don't see the urgency of this. It should have proceeded under notice of motion. So.
This is on the floor for debate. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the only urgency is in terms of ultimately getting to the point of considering the motion that I'm proposing to reinstate money back into the Youth Engagement Initiative program. That is somewhat time sensitive because, as you'll recall, Council, when we saw the presentation on this program from 2016, staff within the Tourism and ECDEV department are reaching out to other corporate sponsors to get involved in this project in the spring. They're reaching out then to young people who they encourage to put their little business proposal together, and they go ahead and create businesses for themselves over the course of the summer. So time is of the essence on it. If council's going to consider directing staff to put that money back in, we have to make that decision sooner rather than later. So that's why I appreciated the clerk giving me the option of asking you to waive the protocol in order to consider the reconsideration.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver, and of course if this passes then we can certainly go further into the debate, but your comments are in order. So this is simply a motion to reconsider. It'll need a 2/3 majority. So I will be voting, and that way if there's 9 of us, it'll make it simple, 6 need to support this. Any other discussion? I will call the question. Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposed. So I see 6 of 9 that would be carried. Yes.
Am I missing something here? Like, we're putting it in and telling them to take it from someplace else in the same budget, are we not? What's the point? I could care less if he can run the program within his budget, let him do it. Why do we have to go through this process to, it doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm not going to debate it yet because I want to put a motion on the floor so we can get into the discussion. That's okay. No, I appreciate your comment, but I want to move this along. Councillor Oliver has moved. Councillor Geisens is second. That resolution number 9 of the council budget minutes of January 24, 25, 27, and 30, 2017, which reads as follows, be reconsidered. That $12,200 be reduced by $8,700 for a total of $3,500 under meeting supplies in Development and Cultural Services Administration. That's what we're reconsidering. Discussion. Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Mayor, did you have a seconder for Councillor Oliver's first motion about waiving the rules of order?
Yes.
Oh, you did?
Who was the second? Councillor Height seconded it.
Thank you.
Keep me on my toes, are you, mister? Good for you. Height and then Black. I saw the hand there and it went down and back up, so.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I guess, personally, I'm not sure why we're going through all of this rigmarole, really, to have the reconsideration for some kind of cut that we made, but fair enough. What I think here, Council, when we passed resolution number 9, it said, cut some money out of meeting supplies. Somehow that meeting supplies turned into the youth business initiative. I'm not sure how that happened, but it was in a report or a correspondence from us, right? And I agree with Councillor Oliver. I don't want to see that die. And why it ended up on the chopping block in the first place is beyond me. Apparently there was some kind of accounting error, and then the money was over into administration when it should have been in ECDEV, and yada, yada, yada. That's not what council's intention was when we went through the budget. It was cut it out of meeting supplies. And I don't really care for what I've seen happening with our budget cuts here. We'll make some cuts, staff will come back with something. Oh, you meant to cut it out of here? Oh, is that 20,000 in Norview? Same kind of thing here. Youth initiative. Oh, council doesn't like that because we cut out some meeting supplies. We shouldn't have to go through this. That money was in there. If it's a problem with the accounting part of it, find it somewhere. We shouldn't be here. But if we are here, I certainly support Councillor Oliver's initiative to put that youth engagement initiative back into the budget and to run that program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Black.
The problem I'm having with this is, again, the corporation is large, and we have processes in place to follow, and the reason we have processes is because it makes things flow a little bit better, so we're not chasing our tail all the time, so throughout the whole year we're not reconsidering, $10,000 budget item here, $10,000 budget item there. It makes it more fair when we deal with the budget. And I'd have to say that I think I did support giving this money to the youth. But I don't know what happened. I was in favor of it. We had our budget session, and we're done with it. So this is very unusual for me. I've never seen this happen where we carry on with the budget throughout the whole year, because that's what we are, in essence, doing. Maybe this is one item, but sets a precedent, and some other councillor has their favorite, bring it forward. What's to stop anyone else from bringing it forward? That's where the fairness comes in, and that's why we have a budget process. Deal with it then. And you open this up, there's another can of worms, and I have to let my fellow colleague, Councillor Height, know. He says the cans are coming out of the worms, or the worms are coming out of the can. The worms have been out for a long time.
Mr. Baird, could I ask you a question? Because I too did not quite fully understand this, and I think everyone around this table, for the most part, appreciated, was supportive, and is still wants to see the youth initiative. So who basically made the decision that the cuts that council wanted, because I don't believe it was a motion of council to cut the youth from this budget. So I guess my question is, who made that decision? Because I don't believe that was the intent. As a matter of fact, that youth initiatives, the two programs, was never discussed at the budget that I recall as part of this cut. I don't think it was ever discussed. I don't mean put in a motion, I mean discussed. Do you know who made the decision that the money that this council wanted out of the Development and Cultural Services budget, Chris, if I can, decided that it's going to be the youth initiatives? And please correct me if it was made here. I'm not trying to find a scapegoat here at all. I'm just wondering how this was eliminated.
Through you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, the Youth Initiative Program ended up in my administration budget, not in the Tourism and Economic Development budget.
Okay,
It's just how it happened. And the SUP program consisted of funding in probably 3 or 4 accounts. One had meeting expenses, one had, I think, speakers, things like that for the kids, and then there was an offset revenue line.
okay.
And so when council went through my administration budget, my budget was $3,500, as it has always been, but for 2017, it showed $8,700 to help offset the cost of this program. And that was targeted as a new budget initiative, an NBI, that really jumped off the page, because the $3,500, it was a 200% or 300% increase in that line. So it was quite obvious. You'll recall the budget detail is very high level. So it was mentioned that it was part of the youth attraction program or
Yes,
entrepreneurship.
yes,
I can't
that's
remember the exact wording.
Youth attraction.
And that was the exact amount that was added in there for meeting supplies. So it was simply removed. There were 2 other accounts where there was funding removed to bring it down to a 0 increase, which was directed by council.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I'm figuring out a little bit now why. Councilor Brunton, please.
Well, Your Worship, confusing. The supplies budget, what else is in there? Interesting. Where are you going to get the $8,700 out of it? We've asked you to put it in one line and take it out in another, so where's it coming out of?
Through the mayor, the budget was set at $12,200.
Yes.
Council directed a cut of $8,700, leaving $3,500. Those meeting supplies are basically for the whole department, for whenever we meet, to book rooms, to bring in some water or juice, or to print documents that might be used for those meetings. That's what that line is for. Where the $8,700, that's been removed, and what has been suggested by this motion is that $8,700 be reinstituted into that, so that youth entrepreneurship program can function as originally intended.
Well, it seems to me there's a lot of line items in budgets that are materials and supplies, so maybe we need more detail in the future what's in them, because there's an awful lot of money being spent on materials and supplies, and if this kind of stuff goes on in there, then it's kind of got me thinking down the line here, that we need more detail. Mr. John.
Okay, before we go any further, the clerk, and rightfully so, has said to me, we have not passed this motion for reconsideration. What we just passed previously was to exempt ourselves from our procedural bylaw to ask for reconsideration. So we're getting, and I'm just as guilty as anyone else. I was a step ahead of where we should be. We have not passed the motion for reconsideration. So I'm going to deal with that first. Otherwise, if it doesn't pass, there won't be this discussion. Again, Councillor Oliver has moved. Thank you for that. You're right on the money. I got to follow procedure. Councillor Geisens has seconded that resolution number 9 of the budget, council budget meetings, minutes of January 24, 25, 27, 30, 2017, which reads as follows, be reconsidered. And that motion that we're being asked to reconsider here is that the $12,200 be reduced by $8,700 for a total of $3,500 under meeting supplies in Development and Cultural Service Administration. That was passed at budget. We're now being asked for a 2/3 majority for reconsideration. Anything else on the reconsideration? It's pretty straightforward, I think. When we need 6, I will be voting. Those in favor of reconsideration? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? 2, 3, 4. That is defeated. And you won't need that, obviously. Correct? Right. Councillor Height, please.
So just for clarification, is the youth engagement initiative done?
I can't answer that. Councillor, sorry, not a councillor, Mr. Baird.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Height, the program will still continue. It just won't be funded to the level that was proposed in the 2017 budget, but I can assure you that it will continue. And depending on the amount of private sector contributions, that will determine the scope of the program again for this year.
Okay.
I personally wish, this is nobody's error, that maybe we had had the discussion of where the cuts and how they would have affected that program back in January. Because I think, in all due respect, I didn't realize that that's where these cuts would be coming from. Chris has explained why it ended up in the administration part of his budget for overall, correct, Chris, in the department? And I don't think, well, I can only speak for myself, I didn't understand then. Councillor Geisens, I think your hand was up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Why, I know that we cut some things out of the budget and everything like that, but surely, I don't know how much the economic development gets as far as a budget, but surely they can find $8,000, now come on, to say that that program is going to die. I don't think it will. Just find the $8,000 somewhere. If you have to cut something else out, we'll cut it out, something frivolous, I guess. That's what the reason I voted against.
Thank you. We'll move on then. And Chris has given his answer that it will be back again this year, but certainly not to the level it was previously. I am now on the item 16, which though has been deferred, I do have to have a motion to officially do that. So I will read that Councillor Columbus has moved, Councillor Geisens has seconded that the Code of Conduct complaint advisory committee member be deferred for the period of 1 week. Any discussion on that deferral? No? Those in favor? Thank you very much. That just puts it in writing, which we talked about at the onset. There is some other business here, and before I get to individuals, page 155, there's an action item list with April due dates. There's a report here. Do you need a motion on this? No, just information. No, anything you want to just speak to on this? There's no motion needed. It's just our information action list. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'll start with staff. Jean, anything for us tonight?
No, I have nothing.
Bless you. Mr. Cridlin?
Nothing this evening.
Mr. Clerk?
No, sir.
Ms. Acting County Manager?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Baird? Thanks. Good to see you back. Hope you had a good rest. Shelley Darlington?
Nothing, Your Mayor, thank you.
Pleased with the way I remembered your name, didn't you? Yeah. James?
I have one thing for
Please.
Mayor and Council.
Thank
I'd just
you.
like to personally thank Mayor and Council for passing bylaw 2017-39 tonight. Thank you.
Well, I've got to just, you got me scrambling. Oh, boy. Look at I'm surprised the flash cubes aren't going off as we speak. You're quite welcome. That's all you have? Oh, I love me. Who do you love, James? Thank you. I'm only kidding. Okay. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two quick things this evening. First of all, I had the pleasure, and I know our mayor, Mayor Luke, was there as well as Councillor Black on Saturday night at the Simcoe Legion when they hosted an open house to show their new renovations, and they received funding from, I think, from the Canada 150 program, both federally, I guess federally, to do renovations in the Legion Hall. And they've done a wonderful job. It was a great celebration, and it was appropriate, I guess, on the same weekend of recognizing Vimy. Mr. Mayor, the other thing I'd just like to mention briefly, yesterday I had been invited to attend a meeting in Toronto hosted by the Waterfront Regeneration Trust, talking about our waterfront trail. And as council knows, several years ago, we hosted, as did other Lake Erie North Shore municipalities, the first waterfront trail adventure on the Lake Erie shoreline rather than on the Lake Ontario shoreline. And this session yesterday was just an update for all of those communities and organizations that are involved in the waterfront trail. And I have to say now, it has been renamed to the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail, because the trail now extends from the east end of Ontario, down the St. Lawrence, all the way along the shoreline of Lake Ontario, now Lake Erie, of course, up Lake Huron, and has now actually got a section approved across the North Shore, North Channel of Georgian Bay up towards Sault Ste. Marie. Mark Borkamp from the Community Services Department was also there, and appreciated his attendance as well, and I think we both found it quite interesting. So it is also good news that the communities along the Lake Erie Great Lakes Waterfront Trail will be hosting their adventure, which is a big tour of a couple of hundred cyclists that spend the whole week traveling the waterfront trail along our wonderful Lake Erie shoreline. And I can tell you that the section here in Norfolk County is the best section, not only because it has the most scenic section of shoreline, of course, but we do have our paved shoulder, and cyclists that are serious about adventure touring like this really, really value having the paved shoulder along that route. And of course, the third and most significant thing is perhaps the wineries that we have along our section of the shoreline. So it was a good event. I'm glad Mr. Borkamp was able to go. He provided me with some support materials so that I was able to speak for a few minutes about what we're doing here in Norfolk County on our trails, and where I, at least, would like to see this whole Great Lakes Waterfront Trail model go in the coming years. So appreciated going. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Black, please.
Just one thing to report, good news for downtown Simcoe and for everybody in Norfolk County. We now have a new coffee shop on Robinson Street across from the Talbot Gardens Arena, and it's called Joy's Bakery Cafe, and just so happens to be in my building. And I don't own it, but I've had a wonderful experience with the family that has gone in there. It's joy. It was a whole family affair of renovating the property. They did go through jump through all the Norfolk County hoops, and gas fitting, inspections, and building inspections, and health inspections, and their opening day was Monday, and it's Joy, Judith, and Anna, and sisters, and daughter, and the whole family was involved in the renovations. The father, really impressed, even maybe not quite as old as Councillor Wells, but he was in there doing all the carpentry work, and it'd be a treat to go in there and just look at some of the tables and things that he has done, and I know the husband did the floors. It was a real family affair, sort of like the Lukes. When the Lukes get together, like there's probably about 100 of them, and I think that's why the mayor always gets elected. But this is another, this is a really good thing. I'm really impressed with families that really get together, and this is a family that deserves to be. Have a lot of customers, and they did have a lot on their opening day. And they are providing excellent coffee and cappuccinos and espressos and varieties of teas and baked goods. And the baked goods aren't just done each day, they're done throughout the day. So they do a small batch, when they're gone, they do a new one. So you're getting really fresh stuff. So I think it's going to be a successful business, and maybe it's the beginning of some more revitalization of our downtown.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Sonnenberg. Councillor Columbus.
A few items here. When we have a council and committee meeting and we make a decision in camera, question to the clerk, is that being it's a council and committee night, does that constitute the right, are we doing it the right way, or do we have to wait till something goes to full council to ratify our committee in-camera decision?
Good question through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, technically the closed session minutes are ratified when the regular minutes of that meeting are approved. So the April 4th closed session would have been ratified tonight when we approved those minutes. Often, I actually, when I was attending a course, I heard our future incoming county manager speak to it, and I asked him questions specifically about this, and he had a very interesting reply. It said sometimes we need to do business, and sometimes there's direction given in closed session that simply can't wait a week, and so we trust that council will not change their mind upon what direction sometimes we get there. But if you're looking at it technically, yeah, then it is the council approval.
Okay, thank you. The other one, read today about the Bank of Montreal and Waterford closing, and it just seems to be a sign of the times with one closed in Langton and now Waterford, and I guess it's the new internet, TD and Simcoe downtown.
Yeah.
Wonder what's going on. I guess it's just the internet banking.
Internet banking.
Few employees. Yeah. And to Mr. Baird, Chris Baird here, some people are asking questions about yard sales, and there was a few out last weekend already. And how many yard sales are permitted, and can you elaborate on, I think we just passed a bylaw on that. Is it 1 yard sale a year, or?
Through the mayor, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out, and I'll let all of council know tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Thank you. And just a positive note here, I understand that the New Lindbergh Brewery in Nixon, they're having a celebration tomorrow with, I think it's 6:30.
Correct.
They received some type of special award for the best beer in the province of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I have a few things on my list today. Internet voting, speaking of which, when is the clerk going to bring where our motions appear on the screen before us and we can push a button and the people from home can see which way we vote per motion? Is that your next staff report coming next week?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you guys don't have the money.
Didn't we just save $50,000 by not going with your recommendation? Because that would probably get the job done. Just saying, there's probably a lot of people at home are quite confused, because I know this council can be quite confused at some of the motions that go forward, and it would be handy for them to see them on a screen, and since Andy's in control of the cameras and the show in general.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I had experience in the city of Hamilton where we spent a great deal of money during our council renovations, and we brought in a system like that. When we go forward with our council renovations, they were going to be this summer. They won't be next year because we won't do them in an election year, so it'll be 2019. We'll definitely look at items like that. The problem that we had in Hamilton was we got the same system that they had at the UN, and it was a bit too complicated for the needs there, so they actually never used it. So they spent a great deal of money, and they just never utilized it.
We certainly don't want that version. We'll go with the easy version. And then my next one on my list is we dealt with the recreational master plan. Is that it? We're going to go with the multi-use center, and we're not going to address any of the halls or the community centers or the parks or the parkettes. Is this the big book I collect dust on my shelf now? We're never going to see it again?
Through the chair, no, there were, I think, 10 or 12 items that staff had acted on that they could do through operating budgets. We saw bringing it forward that it was the 3 facilities in Simcoe that we saw as the big ticket items. We can update, I mean, we have the Halls reports coming as well, trying to get through that. That's mentioned in the report. Yeah, we took the big ones this time around, and yeah, there's lots of steps to come, so we can update as, you know, as time goes along.
Well, I know we now have a parkland dedication fee, and there was a lot of parkland references in there. And are we not going to address that? Because I know the developers are paying huge amounts of money now because of that great big fee that we put in. We're not going to get anything more on that?
Well, I think going forward, we will be collecting or able to get parkland with developments. And that was part of the bylaw to be able to get that in the future, to have funds so we can have parks in new subdivisions, that sort of thing. Where in the past we didn't have the funds, and I often look at Delhi. It's a lot of older neighborhoods, but yeah, there are no parks in those. So going forward, as proper planning or moving ahead, we'll have parkland space in newer subdivisions.
But like, one of my concerns is even our older parks. Are we putting new playground equipment in it? Like, will some of that money go into that, or there's some tree planting or tracks? We don't necessarily have to let our older parks fall apart so that we can build new ones in subdivisions.
Through the chair, I'll look at Mr. Baird. Maybe it's my understanding that the parkland parkland bylaw was only for the land itself. I don't think it's for equipment and stuff like that. We have, I believe in the last budget, we did have 2 parks, one in Wellington and one in Delcrest, to upgrade the equipment, and the one in Delcrest was obviously turned down at budget time, so we'll throw it in back in next go around a budget to hopefully get the equipment replaced in there.
Okay, and then my last one on the list has to do with page 11 of our information package. If you could turn to that, I'll need some comments from our treasurer or deputy treasurer. We passed the bylaw. So, but as you'll see in there, the Bill 68 submission deals with the 1/3 tax exemption that municipal councilors receives as part of their pay package. The federal government, for some reason, it appears they're going to ask us, or well, not really ask us, they're just going to take that away. And it says here that they're actually going to ask municipal treasurers about how this approach, what it will have on the municipal budgets. I can't see it having any impact on the budgets other than what we're going to get expense accounts, because that 1/3 of our tax exemption is spent on our day-to-day stuff, or that's what it's initially in there for, is how I understand it. So how will it affect our budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a very good question. I read that same bulletin, and we don't budget for your 1/3 exemption and that 1/3 is the CPP and the EI and all those expenses, and that's just an in and out. We collect it, and then we send a check out to the various ministries. So I'm not sure what they mean by that. I was going to look into it further.
Yeah, and if I may just add to this, when I was a week ago Friday at the WOWC meeting in London, this item came up for discussion, and one of the fears is, especially in larger municipalities where these council jobs are considered full-time, with full-time wages attached, that the councils will simply say, I want to still make the same take-home, so we're going to jack the gross up so that we should not be all of a sudden working for less take-home than we did before this bill, if it is passed. So I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that was one thing that was mentioned, that's a possibility of raising the overall gross to recognize the same, because the bottom line is what goes in the bank every pay. So I just wanted to throw that was one thought that could happen.
Yeah, this is almost an urban versus rural scenario because your urban counselors make so much more, and they have staff to help them too.
That's right.
We do not.
Yeah.
And like one of the things too, this is obviously we don't make enough that you can't have a full-time job unless you're retired and have pensions, except for me and Harold, right? So, but what that does too is it increases our income tax rate. So we were just dealing with pay equity. So how is this pay equity? Because we work at extra jobs and now our tax bracket climbs exponentially geared with that as well. So we take home less than you guys. So we're going to bring out little piggy banks and stuff next week and take donations maybe. All right? But honestly, Mr. Mayor, this is totally urban versus rural because rural councilors don't make close to what the urban ones do. And right? So, and I'm not sure why the feds are coming after us, though. They must need a lot of money to pay for some one-third projects. Thank you.
One other thing that I'll mention on Bill 68 we talked about, and I certainly voiced my opinion quite loudly, was the government is proposing on the conflict of interest that when an elected official declares a conflict of interest and, leaves the room or whatever, doesn't vote on it, they also want the counselor to sign at the end of the meeting a form that states the conflict of interest and the rationale for it and signs it. And, my comments to the group was simply this. I probably use my signature a dozen times a day, sometimes more, for development agreements and other things on behalf of the county. I don't mind signing my name. But the problem with conflict of interest is not the elected member that stands up publicly in a meeting, declares it, it's recorded in the minutes, leaves the room, as you did tonight, didn't vote or discuss. That's not the problem. The problem are the ones that should be declaring a conflict and don't. So I don't know, it's just more red tape, and I asked what's the rationale, and the representative from the provincial government says it's more accountability. Well, then let's sign 3 declarations, and that'll be 3 times the... nevertheless, thank you, Councillor. Next is Councillor Brunton, and then Wells, and then Geisens.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Just a couple of things. Downtown revitalization, I've lost track of the name. Is it the South Coast Coalition Group?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby Sheik, is he coming to speak to us? I've heard that for months. Is that going to happen?
I don't know.
Somebody answer that question?
Don't know.
Oh, he is coming though. When? Does somebody
Hold on. Mr. Clerk, can you answer Councillor Brunton's question, please?
My recollection when he canceled his deputation was early May. So at the time his last deputation some time ago, he said he wasn't unable to. He identified the clerk, said he wouldn't be able to come till May. So
okay.
He hasn't notified us.
They haven't given up? No. Okay. My next question is, we've had a few calls recently on roadside garbage. It's that time of year when there's a lot of things up here. I just wondered, do we have any kind of policy? And then maybe I could direct that to Sean.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess to answer that question, I've seen some of it around Simcoe myself recently. And are you referring to the large items, couches, chairs, that kind of stuff?
Well, no, the call I got just today was for Decoux Road. Apparently down there in the roadside ditches, just paper and garbage. Now, I personally haven't looked at it, but I did get a call on it. I just wonder, does your staff go out and look at those kind of things this time of year?
Through you again, Mr. Mayor, yes, we certainly do. This time of year is unsightly, and you can see all the stuff that's accumulated over the course of the winter. Staff do identify areas where cleaning is needed. There's your typical hot spots, like the 14th by the transfer station. There's various other roads that, for whatever reason, seem to accumulate more debris and garbage than others, and yes, staff do identify. We also get calls from the public, as well as counselors, advising of roads that could stand some litter and debris cleanup, in which case we respond to those.
Okay, thank you. My last item, Mayor Luke, is who ate all the sandwiches tonight? Just asking the question, somebody. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Did no one want to take credit for that? Put their hand up and take credit? A little heavy on the mayo, I would say, Councillor Brunton. Councillor Wells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I want to confess to my fellow councillors that I am getting old and I forget, and proof of that is right now. I remember Mr. Baird saying that he'd get back to us next week, but I can't remember what he said because I thought that's something, whatever he was going to get back to us, send us an email, that's something that the constituents should hear his answer. And I can't remember what it was.
Let me help out Councillor Wells if I could, Mr. Mayor. There was one item tonight that Councillor Columbus raised about yard sale frequency that I promised to get back to you tomorrow. But Councillor Wells, you did ask me at break. This might jog your memory. It had to do with noise bylaw and noise bylaw complaints.
I got that here.
Okay.
I got that. No, and because I think we should have it on tape, and so that the people will know the answer to your question about how many yard sales they may have.
What I'll
Because
do, Mr. Mayor,
week.
I will put that information into a memo, so it goes in the information package,
Okay.
so it will be available to the media and the public.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is, again, staying on my old side, I'm also getting old because I have to write things down, and a news flash is coming to you this way. You know that summer's coming? Did you all know that? And with summer comes certain changes. And I am already getting calls about this, believe it or not. When summer comes and the weather changes, people spend more time outside, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, when they're spending time outside, sometimes there's a lot of music and a lot of activities going on. And I don't know if any of you have ever been around these sort of activities, but as the night progresses, the noise gets a little louder and louder and louder. And there are some neighbors that don't take too kindly to this noise. And so they have a choice. And their choice is they call the police. And the police come. Very nice. And they say to the people, would you please be quiet? Some people are trying to sleep. And you know what happens? They are quiet for a while. But unfortunately, then they rev her up again. And this causes problems between the neighbors and the people partying. And I guess what I need to know from, and I guess it'd be Mr. Baird, and the police don't want to come again. They've already been there 2 times or 3 times trying, and obviously they're not meeting much success. What other options do the neighbors have? And now I will sit down, and I'll try to remember your answer.
Okay, through the mayor. You're referring to our noise bylaw. We do have a very effective bylaw that's been in place since 2010. And that basically regulates, I think the example you gave is sort of a party that gets out of hand. Yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, or singing is what's defined in there, and everything that goes with it. Within a residential zone, that's not permitted between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m., Monday to Saturday, and from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. on Sundays and holidays. In other areas, like resort areas and wherever that else might be that's non-residential, time is different. It's 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. and 11 to 9 on those Sundays and holidays. So if this is a situation that's occurring or a complaint, part of the problem is our bylaw staff work daytime, not after 9, unless it's a long weekend and they're being deployed to some of the resort areas for long weekends and so on. Residents are always encouraged to contact the bylaw phone number. And if our service is not available, there's instructions to contact the Ontario Provincial Police, and they are fully versed and able to enforce Norfolk County's noise bylaw. And I can't tell you how they do their business, but we follow their program, and that's usually try to seek compliance, just to explain that there's been a complaint and a problem, and you seek their consideration, turn it down. If they do have to come back a second or third time, that's usually when they take a perhaps more aggressive approach and deal with up to and including charges. So that's the best bet is when in doubt, certainly call the bylaw office and or the OPP, depending if it's outside normal business hours.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really understand Councillor Wells' concern. Adding to what Mr. Baird said, we did have just a couple of weeks ago the annual once-a-year meeting between OPP, Norfolk Detachment, and our senior bylaw official. And always the noise bylaw is one of the items that does come up. And it's my understanding, and Mr. Mayor was there as well, that the that the OPP folks are now committed to take the approach, just as Mr. Baird said. They come back a second time. The format of the ticket that can be issued under our bylaw is much more simple, and the officer can, and we're told will issue a ticket on that second visit if it's a complaint for excessive noise. So we all hope that it all unfolds the way they said, because this is one of the biggest things we deal with as councillors, of course. But I hope, Councillor Wells, you can take that and pass that on to your constituents. The OPP rank and file officers have now been instructed by their senior staff that that's what's supposed to start happening.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Geisens, please. Thank you, Councillor Wells. Okay, then I'm last. I got 4 very quick items, and I will be quick. Sunday, Councillor Oliver and myself and Maureen Chunick represented council at the Big Brothers Big Sisters bowling fundraiser. Did we have fun, Councillor Oliver? We had a lot of fun. How did we? Well, we had fun. We'll leave it at that, and I want to thank you for your participation. Next week at council, I will be asking Lee Robinson when she returns for an update on where we are with Meisner Dam repairs. As you mentioned, summer is coming, and I will certainly be emailing her and giving her a heads up that I will be asking that. Some of the public is now asking me, where are we? When I was at the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus session, the SWIFT program is alive and well. We haven't heard much about it for a while, but May the 15th, I believe, mid-May, the RFPQ, the request for proposal qualification, will be tendered out, which will be the first step in putting things into action. And then when that is awarded, things will swing into gear around November, I believe. So it's sort of the first phase of several phases to get through this high-speed internet all across southwestern Ontario. I have information. I will pass that on to you in your mailboxes this week. I just been busy and haven't got to that. Lots of pictures in and diagrams, and easy to follow how this is going to take place. There and there and there. And the last item is just a reminder to everyone that our offices are closed, of course, this Good Friday and also on Easter Monday. And certainly on Tuesday when we get back in action next week on the 18th, I will be here waiting to welcome our new county manager who starts on Tuesday the 18th. And we'll be here for council as far as I know next Tuesday evening. That is all I have. I think it's time to do the confirming bylaw and head out. Councillor Geisens has moved. Councillor Brunton has seconded that bylaw 2017-42 is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this council this 11th day of April 2017 be approved, signed by the mayor or clerk and affixed with the corporate seal. Those in favor? It's carried, and good evening and thank you very much.